Welcome to Travel Again Presents, the weekly travel roundup covering the headwinds and tailwinds impacting the business of travel. Please welcome our hosts, Mike McCormick and Ed Silver. Hello, Mike. Good to see you.
Hey, Ed, how you doing today?
I am doing awesome. Mike, welcome again to Season 3, Episode 2. Man, we are off to a great start to the season. And I just continue to be so jazzed about the guests we have planned. And our guest today is just another amazing luminary of the travel industry. So I am thrilled to get us going.
Sounds good to me.
All right. With that, let's just dive right into the news. Mike, I have chosen 6 articles for Article 1 because there are so many news stories covering this. Mike, what is the problem with air travel? What's the deal with all these airplane crashes? We've got one Delta flight upside down. We had a Southwest near collision. We had a flight to India rerouted due to a terror scare. We had a Delta flight from Atlanta filled with smoke. We had a flight in Scottsdale with a Motley Crue member on board, 1 dead. All of this just since our last recording. I personally, just to give you my take real quick, I do not see a pattern here between all of these incidents. But if you would give our listeners some perspective, what's the deal with all the airline mess, Mike?
Well, I think your comment's dead on. We don't want to jump to any conclusions. You have to have an abundance of caution here to try to force a pattern here where there isn't one. I don't think there is particularly is one here. And I think, there's a certain amount of probability of with all the flights in all the world, you're going to have incidents. And that's just realities, right? No system is 100% perfect or infallible. However, there are a few things to take away. One is that any incident makes the headline news. So of course, travel safety is always, a high, let's say of high interest to the public. And so therefore the news and media covers it. The other issue though, I think is more important. And we covered this when we first talked about the mid-air collision here in DC and the tragedy there, that it's important also that we really do understand the root causes, take action where action is needed. And I think in this case, we still, the investment that's needed in modernizing our traffic control is just, I think, it's been on the docket forever through multiple administrations. I don't think there's any disagreement that it needs to be done. The issue, of course, is funding. So that one has its own kind of, set of issues around it. But again, I think back to the point of, you can't draw any conclusions that there's some sort of pattern here at all. It's just the fact that this always makes the news.
Okay. Thanks for that perspective, Mike. Moving right along from the air travel system to hotels, Mike, I picked up 2 articles and maybe a third, which we could talk about. Hyatt to acquire Playa Hotels and Resorts for $2.6 billion. And I'll put this up on the screen for our viewers. They plan to acquire Playa Hotels and Resorts for $2.6, marking a significant expansion of its all-inclusive resort portfolio in the Caribbean. And I also picked up that Hyatt is to launch Select Transient brand. And so a lot of action for Hyatt and a lot of action in the hotel space. Help our listeners get some context here, Mike.
Well, so just stepping back from the hotel industry at large, I think largely I would say the hotel industry and certainly the major brands continue to be very bullish about the future needs, demand that and maybe really unmet demand out there in the marketplace. Marriott, separately from this article, their CEO really talked through and their plans for expansion, the number of properties that they have in, coming online, which is, hundreds and hundreds of properties in all sectors. So they are, certainly very bullish about the future. and the need for expansion. Hyatt has been doing it more through the building properties, but also been very acquisitive when it comes to all-inclusive and/or resort properties as they try to fill out their portfolio. I think that just again, the time it takes to build a property, there's a there's a lag time that's hard to predict demand that far in advance when you're talking 2, 3, 4 years out. So properties like that, part of it is more of a long game. Acquisition is more immediate, but again, the need for, and certainly the major brands' desire to continue to expand and grow their footprint is seems to be just roll along despite what's happening out there in the marketplace. So that's a positive news for travel overall. As a separate note, you and I talk about this. We've talked about it before. I bring it up again just because woven into all these articles is always like another brand launching yet another sub brand, another new name, another new brand, powered by, blah, 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 by Marriott, blah, 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 by Hyatt, etc. Hyatt Select. I just from a consumer marketing perspective, I still don't understand. I don't understand having that many brands to support. And for a consumer who we work in the industry, and if you took all of the brands on one side and took all the major, hotel groups names on the other side and tried to like in school, try to draw the lines to connect the dots, who's Spring Hill with, who's Select this, that. I mean, we work in the industry, and we would never get 100% on that test. We'd probably be lucky to pass. And it's so for the consumer, I don't understand. Like consumers, like they can relate to a brand. I understand that they, within those brands, they have properties, and at different types, at different, feeding and supporting different types of properties and need in the market, everything, roadside, mid-scale, upper scale, luxury, et cetera, et cetera. I get that. And I understand the need for some sub branding, but oh man, when you're carrying 50 sub brands, I don't understand how that gets supported from a marketing perspective, or at least very well. But
yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I think, adds to consumer confusion.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's a strategy there. Mike, buried in the Marriott news is the return of the Starwood brand. To your point, adding another brand name that they had acquired but then killed, and here it comes back to life. There must be a strategy there. I'm not sure I totally understand it. Maybe people understood Starwood, and Marriott felt they should bring it back for some reason.
Well, there's a little bit of a backstory there, because when Marriott acquired Starwood from Barry Sternlicht, part of that deal was he kept the name Starwood. He retired it, didn't do anything with it, and they waited years and years. And I, without reading the agreement, and understanding that exactly how that was structured, maybe there was a time period on it or whatever before he could bring that back to the table. Now Barry, he's since developed some properties under the Baccarat brand and done some, he's got a smaller footprint of properties in the luxury sector. Maybe it had a time period on it. Maybe now they're ready to, are able to bring it back. He still owns properties in the Marriott system, is a major property owner within Marriott. So, he's got some say there in terms of, the future where, maybe doing something like this. But it sounds like, they're ready to bring Starwood back to the market somehow collaboratively. So it's a little unique behind the scenes, but be interesting to see how that fits into the equation. And certainly, from what we were just talking about, yet more brand noise, confusion, et cetera. But hey, look, again, what do I know? It seems to work. I mean, or must, because everybody doubled down on it. I mean, Best Western Choice, they do it too. I mean, they all develop all these micro sub brands, but who knows? It's a little bit of a dilemma to me, but
I like it from the perspective of, as you know, I like action in the space. So I like seeing big acquisitions in the space. It means that things are growing, and that's a good thing. So
positive.
I'll take all this as positive, good news on that front. Mike, I'm going to change gears on you and switch to the corporate travel world. UK regulators have reversed their stance on the CWT deal. The Competitions and Market Authority of the UK announced on Tuesday an about-face in its assessment of the planned acquisition of CWT by American Express Global Business Travel. CMA has, quote unquote, provisionally concluded that CWT is a significantly weaker competitor than in the past and is likely to continue to weaken in the future. And there are other suppliers who will offer customers an alternative to the merged business. Mike, this is exactly what we said last time we talked about the CWT MXGBT deal. Why the reversal here, and what does this mean generally for M&A?
Well, first off, I think the original objection from the UK authorities was misplaced. I mean, I think what you really have to understand the corporate travel market, how fragmented it really is. Although Amex GBT is a major, player and has relative in the scheme of things, they're one of the leading companies, but clearly do not in any way have a dominant majority share of the marketplace. You've got, entrants like Navan, which, raised almost $1.5 billion on a $7.5 or $8 billion valuation, and are growing share. You had Travel Perk, you have the traditional players, BCD. You've got a whole long tail of next tiers, third tier, fourth tier players in that market. You've got upstarts like Solutions Travel off that have built a whole new
brand,
approach off of Spotnana. I mean, hardly, when I looked at the marketplace, I mean, it's so fragmented still. It really, I don't understand the objection. I think it was misplaced. I'm kind of glad they backed off. This isn't a political statement at all about, market power. Look, there's a place at which that makes sense. This isn't one of them. And it just, to me, touches again about not really understanding the dynamics of how the travel industry works, in this case, corporate travel. So I was glad to hear that they backed off of that. The market needs competition. CWT, it was a weakened competitor. Consolidation made sense for them given their economic situation, their ownership. I just, if it wasn't Amex, it was going to be, someone else, BCD, one of the others that was going to propose a merger of some kind. That had been talked about. CWT, that had been attempted multiple times over the years. They've been to the altar different ways with different potential acquirers or partners. So I just think in the scheme of things, this is not it wasn't a place for take a stand. I just don't see it. So anyway, good. I think it's good. Actually, I think it's good they did that. Hopefully the US regulators will follow. I think their combination is actually good for competition. Honestly, I don't think it's a bad thing. So we'll see where it goes.
Okay. The betting markets are showing that the deal is likely to go through. I checked. You can bet on these things these days. And so we shall see. We shall see where it goes. Mike, that is our news for today. So awesome. On to our guest, and what a guest we have for today. We are bringing on Terrell Jones. Terry really is a true luminary of the travel industry. Look, he's the founder of 5 startups. 2 of them are billion-dollar exits. That's billion with a B. He's a noted speaker on AI, innovation, disruption, and he's a speaker who actually has done it. He is a board member of 20 companies with $9 billion in exits. If I read every company he worked with, we would be here all day. Travelocity, Kayak, AMGiNE, Sabre. I could go on and on. American Airlines. He was telling us a story about American Airlines in our pre-set. I think it's easiest just to bring him on stage and let him tell his story, because it's a great one to hear. Please welcome to the stage, Terry Jones. Terry, welcome.
Hey guys.
Hey Terry.
Yeah. Excuse me.
So welcome. I mean, nice intro by Ed. My personal part of it is that I got to know Terry back when I was working with Philip Wolf back in the early days of Focusrite.
Right.
And Terry, even then, was, again, the early days of Travelocity, early online travel. And then, which in of itself would have been, one you'd that would have been a big enough success on its own. What I would really, which I think is amazing, is you not only saw the future in terms of building that business and leveraging and bringing, maybe sometimes kicking and screaming, Sabre in the current environment into the online world, but then you saw the next iteration of that, which was metasearch, and pivoted to that with Steve Hafner, and with working with Kayak, and co-founding Kayak, and again, I just think, like, you've always kind of seen what's coming, but and maybe I'd say that maybe there'd be others that saw it too, but you always were able to also take action and turn it into reality, which is which is exceptional. But happy to have you here. You've always been a great kind of ambassador for the industry too. So welcome, great to have you.
Thanks, Mike.
So, well, with all that, we'll say goodbye now.
Okay, and wrap up.
Wrap up now. So I'm really excited to dig in. Because of all that. I first, just a personal question, like what does inspire you to do this? Like, and what did inspire you to kind of in travel to kind of take, be a part of these and really help drive, a lot of the success in the industry?
Well, I was with Sabre for a long time, as you know, and before that had been in a couple of startups. And I was CIO, which is a terrible job. You're trying to orchestrate a lot of people who don't want to go in the same direction. And, we had this little online thing that was on CompuServe and Prodigy and AOL. And they gave that to me. And I thought, wow, why isn't this thing on the internet? And pretty soon I said, that's going to be a lot more interesting than being CIO, because it's about putting customer needs together with technology. We proved with Easy Sabre that was going to work, but the internet let us break free and do it on our own, and that was so exciting. And then Kayak, the same thing. We had a dinner with Steve Hafner and Paul English and a guy from Microsoft and a VC, and we talked about the fact that 90+% of our customers are searching with us and buying somewhere else. So why don't we solve that problem? With metasearch? And then I got a call from Ginny Rometty, the chairman of IBM, and she said, "Can you come and teach IBM Watson about travel?" And that sounded like a fun thing to do, and that ended up in an AI company where I was chairman and Noreen Henry was CEO. We were too early. The tech worked great. The tech, and we'll talk more about AI later, I know, actually increased conversion significantly. But we couldn't get hotels and cities really to sign up. It was too early, which is why I'm excited now to be chairman of AMGiNE, which is deploying AI into the TMC world. So I think it's about either listening to customers and figuring out what technology could solve their problem, or sometimes as a CIO or in a business saying to the business, "Did you know about this new technology? And I think it could help here." And it's being that maven between business needs and technological capability. That's what's fun about it.
It's as you've gone through this process, like over the years, and been a part of these different, any surprises like along the way, like things that happened that you didn't think would, or kind of vice versa?
Sure. I mean, look, I was too early with a lot of things, but one of the things, and I was talking with the AMGiNE guys yesterday about it. I'm an idea guy, and I was driving my team crazy because I was always coming up with new things at Travelocity. So I just had 2 programmers who worked for me, and all I did was prototypes. And we would put these prototypes out and see what happened. Nice. So we put out flight paging, for example. That's how long ago it was. We were paging people. We were the first people in the world to do that. And that was a huge hit. And then I put out a fare calendar, right? And you could click on the date to get the price. the New York Times loved it. Consumers didn't click on it at all. Fares on a map, nobody did it. But the point was we were experimenting and failing and learning. And so there were a lot of surprises, mostly because I was ahead of the customer, in terms of what they were still trying to figure out. Can we put our credit card in safely? In fact, we put up an 800 number so people could call in and give their credit card because they felt safer that way. We didn't tell them that when they called in, we put it in over the internet, of course. but you've got to work on the customer's desires and their fears of new tech, and both.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like, it's always the marketing challenge, right? Because consumers, you can survey them and talk to them all day long. And even at times what they say they want, what they ultimately do in terms of how they vote, like vote with their money, with their time, with their, is not always the same thing, as you know. And it is interesting. And maybe a good, hey, look, for even as we get into the conversation about AI, I mean, to me, it just seems like it's just like a massive experiment going on right now. Like, and it should be, right? I mean, testing, learning, like not just, not like in a way where we're actively involved in how we want to use it, where we want to use it. And I don't think the roadmap's been set yet. I think it's still way early, right?
But the big thing is the AIs are learning all the time. And that's, as a lecturer on AI, I just was with 1,000 people in the mining industry yesterday. And if your competitor has a learning system in its products and its operations and its logistics, and you don't, how are you going to catch them?
Right.
Because that's what's I think will be the most impactful part of this, is that they're learning systems. And if, as somebody said, you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to somebody who's deploying AI better than you.
Right.
So would you say that fear of losing out to competitors is what's driving a lot of AI experimentation these days?
No, I'm not. I don't think that's it. I think people are seeing a new technology that finally the time is right. We've had this intersection of big data, very large LLMs. So when we did Wayblazer, my partner wanted to go B2C, and I said, we can't do it. We can't ingest the whole world. Somebody's going to ask, where do I go for the best Singapore sling in Singapore? We're not going to know, and we're going to get trashed on social media. We can do a hotel chain, but we can't do the whole world. Now you can do the whole world. So you have these big data, but it can be consumed by LLMs, and you have GPUs. And so they're coming together to create the right environment for AI. And I think, companies are experimenting, they're failing. I think CEOs are naive because they'll say, well, maybe 10% of our people are using AI, and actually 50 to 60% are, and experimenting with it. And, but what I say is, look, GPT is great. You can do marketing, you can do customer service, you can write code. But more important, particularly in the industrial world, is building it into your product.
Right.
And I give an example of John Deere. Their tractors, they have self-driving tractors now that learn your field, and they know where to put on water, and they know where to put on fertilizer, and they know where to kill the weeds. Are you going to buy a Massey Ferguson that doesn't know your farm? No, because I'm hooked. And I think hopefully the same thing will happen with AI and personalization in travel, because personalization has been a dog. It's never really been done very well.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you hit on some of the obstacles there, and some of them are just, especially at the C level. What, like, if you're advising, a leader or CEO of a company about, how to deploy AI, where should they be? What kind of advice would you give them right now?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you want to talk about obstacles, there's risk, right? There's security that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
You really got to solve real problems that the customer has. So again, it's listening to the customer and trying to figure that out. I think somebody said to me at IBM once that the most impactful solutions could involve public data like OpenAI, along with industry data, let's say data from ARC or data from airlines, and corporate data. And the corporate data is the most important because it's not out there in the wild.
Right.
So the question is, what new recipe do you make of it? At Wayblazer, I can tell a story now, I guess. We went to TripAdvisor 9 years ago and said, look, we've just mined 1 million reviews from a competitor. We could mine your reviews and really turn it into something. And they declined. And they still haven't done that, although now they're talking with Perplexity and other people. But that's their worth. There's tremendous amount of knowledge there that when combined with AI technology can create a whole new way of shopping. So I think you have to be creative about what do I have and what does the consumer want that can change the world.
So, looking forward a little bit and kind of, as you think about, some of the applications you're seeing today, certainly with the companies you're involved with, give some examples, where do you see the innovation today? And then, a bit of where do you see us, down the road a little bit in terms of some of the emerging technologies? Yeah.
Well, I think AI will become the new UI.
Right.
If you're talking about natural language, today it's text, but it's also voice. It's kind of funny. We talk to our phones, but we don't talk to our laptop. But I think, we're still stuck in the UI that I rolled out in 1996 at Travelocity.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go and what day? That's not what you're thinking about. Hey, I want to go to the Caribbean with my family. My wife likes spa. I like golf, and I want things for the kids to do. Well, even at Wayblazer, we could take that, and because we'd analyzed millions of images, the next page, you wouldn't get a picture of the front of the property. You get a picture of golf, and you get a review of the spa. And, people are tapping their toe in that a little bit. I mean, Kayak has, a UI filter, AI filter, rather than clicking on things where you can say, I just want American before 8 in first class. There are Booking.com has a route planner on their mobile app, but I think that's where it's going to go. You were talking before about the explosion of brands in hotels.
Yeah.
Well, we know that's driven by the franchise deals.
Right.
That's why you get 3 Marriotts on one pad, because they can't sell another, Hyatt Grand, so they have to sell a Hyatt something else. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense to the customer, but it makes sense for their business model.
Developers. Sure.
But, in working with Marriott, for example, I didn't know they're the biggest operator of golf courses in the world. They have more spas than anybody in the world. They actually operate more 3-star restaurants than anybody in the world, because most of them aren't run by hotels. Right. But you can't say, I want to go to the best Marriott spa in France, regardless of brand. You can't ask them. So it's scale without meaning, right? Yep. So I think AI will allow us to break through that. I think, obviously, we're already seeing AI in operations. We're seeing AI in, analysis of what image works best and what presentation of the hotel works. We're doing a lot of that, but we haven't seen as much consumer facing. Obviously, a little further out will be agentic AI. I was on a panel at Focusrite about that, and a guy was saying, well, this year we're going to see AI agents deployed by consumers fighting AI agents from websites. I think he's a little ahead of the game, but I think agentic AI could be very powerful. It could be like metasearch. And then I think, there's an interesting thing. I'm an advisor to a startup in Israel called Route Perfect. And what they've done is a little bit about 2 things I talked about. One is they interviewed thousands of guides to get advice about the best things to do. And so if I want to go from Paris to Milan and I like wine and opera, it's going to tell me where to go. It's a route planner with day-by-day itineraries, which I started doing as a travel agent at my first job, typing out day-by-day itineraries.
Yeah.
And OTAs don't do day-by-day itineraries. I mean, a little they're dipping their toe in it, but they really don't do that. It's where do you want to go? And so when I saw this, I said, hey, it's a drive app. And 50% of hotels in both the US and Europe are from drive, right? That's how people get around. So I think, we've seen some of those just based on GPT. I don't think that's going to work. They're going to fail. But those that add their own content to it and enhance GPT with AI, I think that could be pretty interesting use of AI going forward.
Yep. Terry, one of the reasons I think that it's slow from a consumer UI perspective, I'm not sure I disagree that it eventually could become that, but people don't read. And right now, most of the chat interfacing is reading text. It's we're visual learners in many ways. And so how are we going to mix the visual?
Let me say two things.
Yeah.
I mean, one, if you just have a search box, which travel sites don't have.
Yep. Right.
If I go to a LL.Bean, I can put in, I want a blue XL button-down shirt.
Right.
I can't do that on Marriott. I have to say what city and what day, and I can't ask that question. So if you just have a search box, it's not a chat. It's just, this is what I want, and you get the bloody answer.
Right.
On the next page. Now, there's another way to do this, and we found it worked very well at Wayblazer, and I've seen it work in retail. So if somebody said to us in chat, I want to go to Thailand, we'd immediately show hotels in Thailand graphically. And then we'd say, why do you want to go? Because one of the things AI allows you to do is capture intent. Mm-hmm. And intent is gold. And OTAs and hotels don't have intent. So you say, it's our anniversary. Wow, there's a picture now of a man and a woman and a sunset and a beach and a bottle of champagne. And okay, how much money you have? $8. Okay, changes to a hostel. But you don't know when they're going to jump off. I was shopping. I had 5 grandkids. I was shopping for kids' toys the other day. I said, want kids' toys? They gave me a bunch of toys. I said, what kind? I said, wooden. They said, okay. What kind of wooden toys? Trains. And you just go down the filter, talking generally to people. But those UIs that ask 22 questions up front, everybody says, I ain't got time for this. I don't want this. So you have to have prompt response all the way through if you want to engage with AI, I think.
Yep.
Love it.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a process here, right? But when we start to get to those, consumer based, like, just perfect example, like you said, like, I've got a family, I'm going here, even just to put together like a draft itinerary of what do I do with the kids when I'm, in Florida for 4 days, right? And give you ideas, even, and something where you can iteratively, even those things right now, that's incredibly valuable. And like you said, and I agree.
And as the Focusrite study shows, a tremendous number of people are experimenting with that.
Yes.
The problem with now, it's not connected to buying.
Right.
So like at Route Perfect, we've connected it to buying.
Right.
And then, you have a mobile app that you're using when you're in the city, and, suddenly it says, hey, it's raining. Let's recommend some different things for you.
Right.
Because it has spatial awareness.
Well, and I think that's the business travel. You start to get to the point for a business traveler where you can even do hey, I've got these 3 meetings. Where should I stay? What's the optimal?
Exactly.
Stuff, right?
So if you look at what we're doing at AMGiNE, we've started because about 60% of offline bookings are email. And the current email process is terrible. You send an email and say, I want to go to New York on Wednesday, stay at the Hilton, come back Friday, and you get screenshots back.
Right.
Well, we use NLP to read the email and come back with 3 suggestions, air, hotel, car, if you ask for it, that fit policy and preference. And you just book. To me, it's like many years ago when I had an assistant. I'd say, I want to go to New York on Friday, stay at the Hilton, come back Saturday, slam the door, and it would happen. Right? That's much easier than spending 30 minutes mucking around with these ancient user interfaces.
Yep.
So you can imagine building that into your calendar, building that into whatever app you're using, be it Salesforce or something else, so that it understands the context of your trip
Yep.
and just says, well, by the way, this is close to your meeting, and this is where everybody at General Motors stays. You know, all your
Right.
compatriots, it's the best hotel, and it fits in policy, and you're done. So I think, you know, that's what we're about at AMGiNE. We're also doing group air, where we found people with these massive spreadsheets of people going to an incentive, typing forever.
Yeah.
We can do that in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or we can send forms out to thousands of people and then conform it to policy. So, you know, there's lots of stuff that doesn't sound sexy, but saves a lot of money and time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is where we're working at AMGiNE. And it's,
Right.
you know, we got all the big guys, you know, working with us. So it's exciting.
Well, it's exciting. And it's, well, to your point, it's the early days yet again, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, wrap up question. This is our season 3 question. We're debuting it on you. It's so we're all faced with real and perceived chaos in our personal, professional lives. Yeah. So how do you cope with chaos in your life?
You know, I don't know. I've always been, although I'm doing 20 different things at once, I have a pretty rigid to-do list that, you know, I work with. And even now, you know, last 20 years I've been working for myself, but, you know, juggling all these boards and everything. I just got to focus on that. And then I make time and make a bunch of time for reading. What's new? I use Flipboard, lots of different apps, but, you know, it's an app where I can collate the things I want to know about, whether it's AI or blockchain or whatever. I can get the latest news, and, you know, then I'll read it all on the airplane before I make my next speech. But I think it's about being both rigid and flexible. You know, we're rigid enough to get stuff done you have to get done, but flexible enough to deal with the chaos and, you know, what's going to try to take you off course.
I'm going to say, look out on the horizon a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to, you know, maybe one day we'll have NDC, you know, and things like that. I mean, you know, bypass has been talked about since I had hair. You know,
I mean, some of these themes, man, I tell you, it's what's old is new again. We just keep laughing. It's like, wow, we've seen this, you know, some of these someday, man, they'll
I was talking, I'll leave you the story. I was talking with some people about a cybersecurity lawsuit and where I might be an expert witness. And I said, you know, we never had that problem at Sabre. That people were terrified. We hooked it up to the internet. I said, let those guys in. It's written in assembly language with a terabyte flat file. They won't know where in the hell they are.
Lock.
That's not a chance they'll know what to do. And they
never did. Only 5 people left on Earth.
Right.
Exactly. Nobody knows how to hack it.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, Terry, great. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, man.
Good to be with you guys.
Terry Jones is currently chairman of AMGiNE. He's a public speaker on many topics in technology. Terry, it was great to have you on the show. Thank you for your time.
TerryJones.com, you know, if you want anything.
There you go, TerryJones.com. Thank you, Terry. Best of luck.
Thanks.
All right, Mike, great speaker. Just amazing background and has so much knowledge about what's going on.
Good
Mike,
perspective. Really good perspective.
Great perspective. Mike, that's our show today. If you have a challenge in your business or you want to better understand the chaotic world of travel, reach out to us at travelagainadvisory.com. We are here to help. Mike, that is our show. We will see everybody back here in about 2 weeks for our next show. Thanks again from Travel Again.
See you, Ed.